33. The sound of the storm. When you try to talk to people in the middle of a storm, they can't hear. They can't catch your words for the sound of the storm. Thunder, rain and wind. And the things the storm moves. Leaves, roofs, tiles, rubbish. I came into the garden, 87 kicks of the garden shed wiser, but I couldn't make myself heard. Dad was just coming in from work. Mum was sitting on the stairs. I ran to him before he took his coat off. Her arms went around him, and she put her head on his shoulder. "Oh, Ben, I'm so glad you're home." "Faith, love, what's wrong? Has there been bad news?" "Not since we spoke earlier. The press have been here twice. Twice. Flo's been terrible all day. This afternoon she had a panic attack. She couldn't breathe. I called the doctor. He gave her a sleeping pill. She's upstairs, flat out, the first proper sleep she's had since Celine went missing. Then the kids just took off somewhere without even asking, and Ted left a note saying they were going swimming. Imagine, he lied, Ben. I didn't know what to do. I thought we'd lost them too. Then Rashid went out to walk the streets. He said he was going to go mad sitting around waiting. And just now the kids came back. Oh, Ben, the relief. They came back in, and Kat and I, we had a row. So, what's new? A terrible row, Ben. I nearly hit her. I came this close. She held out her finger and thumb a centimetre apart. Then she started wailing again. Dad said shush, but she didn't stop. I stood a couple of metres away. "Dad," I said. He didn't answer. "Mum," I said. She didn't answer. I waited and tried again. "Dad, Mum." Mum looked round and swallowed. She said, "Oh, Ted, there you are. Can't you go upstairs and read a book or something?" "But, Mum, I've worked out—" "Shush, Ted," Dad said. "Now isn't the time." The words were hard and short, not like Dad's voice at all, and Mum started crying again, so I went upstairs. In my room, Kat lay face down on the lilo, her fist clenched up and pressed to get between her eyebrows. I noticed that my alarm clock was on the floor, broken into bits. That was the smashing sound I'd heard earlier when tornado touchdown time was going on. "Kat," I said. She shook her head. Her eyes scrunched up. A tear slipped out and trailed down her nose, but she didn't wipe it away. "Kat, I think I've got it," she moaned. "The theories, the 9 theories, I think I know the right one." "Oh, Ted, you and your theories." She grabbed a pillow and buried her head under it. I went up to her and tapped her shoulder. "The theories, Kat," I said. She looked up from the pillow. "Go away," she said. "Kat," I said. Then I added, "Sis," because she likes me calling her this. She says it makes me sound normal. But this time it didn't work. "Ted, I don't want to know." "Kat?" She took the pillow and banged me on the shoulder with it. "That's to stop you looking like a duck that's forgotten how to quack," she said. Then she threw herself down and sobbed. Next, I crept into Kat's room, where Aunt Gloria was. "Aunt Gloria," I whispered, but Aunt Gloria was fast asleep. This was not surprising, as Mum had said she'd taken a sleeping pill. Sleeping pills make your brain waves calm down into a sleep pattern. Aunt Gloria lay on her back, diagonally across the bed, her foot hanging over the edge, and the duvet crooked. Her mouth was half open, her breathing loud and low. Her eyelids were a bruise colour, a purple smudge. I couldn't have woken up her even if I'd tried. I was about to creep out again when I saw Kat's copy of The Tempest face down on the duvet. Kat, like Celine, had been studying it at school. Had Aunt Gloria been reading it too? Celine had said he'd acted in it, and that was right up my street. I realised now what he'd meant, that I would rather like it, because it was named after a dramatic weather condition, and weather is what interests me most. I picked it up, sat down at Kat's desk, and began to read. First, there was a long list of people. This is how plays always start. The author tells you who is who and how they are related to each other, and it is called a cast of characters. This one had a lot of men and some strange sounding spirits, and a female called Miranda, who I remembered Cat saying was a dish rag. Then I read the first scene. I didn't understand it because the language was almost as hard to understand as French, which is my worst subject at school. I read it again, and a third time, before I worked out that it was about a ship sinking in a storm. That was as far as I got when a groan behind me made me look up. Celine? It sounded as if Aunt Gloria was speaking in her sleep. Celine! I crept over to the side of the bed, the Tempest open in my hand. No, Aunt Gloria, I said. It's Ted. She looked at me. The whites of her eyes were bloodshot, which is what happens when you've been crying or staring too hard for too long at something. Ted, she said. She saw the copy of The Tempest and smiled. I was reading that just now, to help me sleep. Celine was in it last term. I know, Aunt Gloria. He told me. She smiled. The dashing young prince, Ferdinand, my Celine. She turned onto her side and curled up, crying. I stood there in silence, not sure if I should put my hand on her shoulder or do nothing at all. After a while, I realised she had gone back to sleep. I put the play down, back down by her side and left the room. Out on the landing, I stood and listened to the house. It was quiet. I wondered why nobody could hear me when it was so quiet. Then I started to hear the sounds houses always make when the people in them are silent. Boards creaking as they settle onto the foundations. Pipes gurgling inside the walls. Central heating humming. I clung to the banister at the top of the stairs. I heard something else. My heart thumping. Blood pumping in my ears. The distant tick of the clock in the hallway downstairs. It was time. Time had a sound too. I'd never heard it before. I put my hands over my ears. It was deafening. Mum appeared at the bottom of the stairs. She came up quietly and gave me a hug. I squirmed. Ted, she said, I apologise. To you, but especially to Cat. Mum, I said, I've worked it out. She patted my head as if I'd said nothing, went past me and knocked on the bedroom door. There was no reply, but she turned the handle and went in anyway. She shut the door behind her. I heard her voice, soft and sad, coming from the other side. Then I heard Cat's. I couldn't hear the words. I went on downstairs just as Rashid let himself in through the front door with a spare key. He stood in the hallway, looking ahead with no expression on his face that I could decipher. Uncle Rashid, I said. Sorry, he said. Oh, hello, Ted. Dad came out of the living room and greeted him by saying, Do you want a can of beer? And they went into the kitchen, just as if I didn't exist. Then I went into the front room. I went over to the mantelpiece and picked up Detective Inspector Pierce's card. I stared at it. I'm no good at telephone conversations, but I remembered how she'd smiled at me when I told her about Celine getting a call on her mobile, and she said how she wished her officers had half my brains. She'd listened then. I normally only use the telephone about once a week. This is because I have nobody I need to telephone, but sometimes Mum makes me call Directory Inquiries number, as she says I need to practice. Today, I was about to use the telephone twice, which was far more practice than I wanted. I sat on the side of the sofa, on top of my flapping hand. I picked up the telephone with my other hand. Then I dialed Detective Inspector Pierce's number. That's the end of 33. See you tomorrow.